Hello,
How you doing, Jim?
Dave. Yeah, fine.
Great to hear your voice again, buddy. Thank you for this.
Yeah, I know your name, don't I?
Did a few interviews the last time around on the phone and then in person when you guys were in Honolulu.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We had a nice chat with Chris. It was really, when I look on YouTube, it appears to be one of the few video interviews of the two of you
Oh, okay.
guys.
We did it on film, yeah.
Yeah, we did, and sadly, as we welcome you back, it's only recently that I just found out about Chris.
Yeah, I think it was that very tour that he got ill. Actually, after he went back to the West Coast, he had a stroke while we were playing. We played a little club in LA, and he had a stroke sort of on the last number.
Unbelievable.
He didn't even know what was wrong with him. He just felt weird, and he went off stage and then he rested a bit, and then the next night I think he went on again and he had another stroke. So he was due to go back to London the following day after that second gig, and he was in the room next to me, and he rang me up in the morning. He said, "Oh, I feel really weird." So I said, "Oh, well, listen, we've got to call an ambulance." So we got an ambulance out, and they took him straight into hospital. And they kept him. They wouldn't let him go back. He was too ill to fly back, so he had to hang around around LA for about 3 weeks.
It's very sad.
That must have been a week or two after we saw you.
Unbelievable. Yeah, that was the fall of 2011. I think it was October or something.
That was it. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Wow, that is really sad. It really touched me because I was getting excited for you guys coming back this time. I thought I'd see the two of you again. We had so much fun.
Yes.
What's he up to? Do you keep in contact with him?
Yeah. He's still sort of on board. He's still on the phone calling me up and stuff. And but he doesn't. He can't travel. He can't play.
And can he walk?
Yeah, he can walk.
Okay.
He's not paralyzed, but he's had stents in his legs. So it all comes from smoking, really. It's all to do with smoking too much.
Man, you got to give him. Please make sure to let him know that I was asking about him, sending him some prayers.
Yeah.
I was in Italy when I found out. I actually found out right before one of those audiences with the Pope, and I said lots of prayers for him in Rome and Venice. And
oh, that was nice of you.
Been thinking about him. So
that's very nice. Yeah.
Well, let him know he's been thought of, and thinking of him now. Really touched.
Yeah, okay, that's very nice of you.
And I see that Top Topham is back in the band. Plus, you got Johnny A. from Boston and Kenny Aronson. Why don't you fill out a picture of who's going to be in the band when you get here?
Well, Topham's not. He actually left.
Okay, he left again?
Yeah.
Who's going to be with you?
The other guys, the ones you mentioned are there, Kenny and Johnny A. And Mike Scavone is on the harmonica and a backing vocal. John Iden is the lead singer now. He was on the Birdland.
Yep.
Basically, the band's totally different when you saw us.
Unbelievable.
Very good.
Unbelievable.
Very good. They're very hot. They're very good. We've just done eight dates on the East Coast. And we did some in the summer, and we did some last November. They're very good guys.
Well, I know who Johnny A. is from living in Boston for a long time. He was a major,
there you go.
Fixture around there, and great to see his name in there. It made me think when I was thinking about all the cats that have come and gone through your life with all of this. If you can try to dissect it for us, prior to meeting Paul Samuel Smith at Hampton School, how into music were you personally? And describe the events that led to you playing the drums.
Well, I was always into, pop music and particularly rock music, the American rock music, Buddy Holly and the Crickets and the Everly Brothers, and Gene Vincent, all those people we used to listen to when I was at school. And we had a school group, actually, Paul Samuel Smith used to play lead guitar, and we had a school group that used to play in the local pub, and at the school dances, and we played all that sort of music. But I was actually, probably a bit before that, I was in a thing called the Boys Brigade. It was a sort of semi-military thing where we wore uniform and marched, and we had a band, and I used to play the snare in the band. And that's how I got into drumming, playing the snare drum.
Ah.
And then I was really hot on all the people like the Shadows and Elvis and DJ Fontana and Tony Meehan and the jazz drummers, Joe Morello and all these people. I always really loved drums. It always did something to me hearing those drums, you know.
Well, you've kept it your entire life, so I think it just bears asking. Talk about the very beginning, Jim, of the formation of the Yardbirds, your earliest memories of getting the group together, and maybe even who it was who came up with the name.
I remember Paul Samuel Smith was always very close. You know, he was at school and he was in the school group, and then when we left school, I saw him now and then. I always used to bump into him. And I bumped into him once and he said, "Oh, do you want to go up and see this band? They're playing near us up in Richmond," which was about 5 miles away or something. He said, "Do you want to see this band? They're called the Rolling Stones. And they've got, you know, this cool singer called Mick Jagger. And they were playing in some little church hall, you know." And I thought, oh, they're good. You know, they're sort of rock and roll, but sort of different. You know, they've got a different slant to their music, very subtly, because they were playing all the sort of R&B bluesy things. And he also played to me the Jimmy Reed live at the Carnegie Hall, which I loved. You know, I thought this music has something extra to it. And I thought that, you know, the drumming is quite cool, and I like that type of drumming as well. So what happened was Paul was in a band with Keith. He met Keith in a pub in Kingston, Surrey. That was near where we lived. And all these musicians and sort of bohemians used to hang out there. Artists, you know, people from the art school, people like Chris Dreyer and Top Topham and, well, even Clapton probably, and Keith, they all used to go to this pub. And, yeah, Keith and Paul had this band. And then I met Topham and Chris, and we started another band. And then we decided it was Paul's idea. He wanted to get the two bands together because his and Keith's band were a bit too folky, and they wanted to rock it up a bit. And they knew I was a rock drummer, you know, from the school group. So we basically united the two bands. And the first date we played was in the interval for Cyril Davis, who was playing over Eel Pie Island. And Cyril Davis was a great harmonica player. Right. Who used to play with Elector's Corner. He
was a historic guy as one of the pioneers of that blues harmonica in England.
Well, he was, but it was quite strange that he got for his backing band Screaming Lord Sutch's band, you know, and they were all rockers. So he was playing blues with this rock band, and they were great, you know. And it's a bit like we did. We combined blues and rock at that time, and you know, we started doing all the covers. All the Howling Wolf and Jimmy Reed and Bo Diddley, all that stuff. And we started getting these sort of quite rare albums that you couldn't find anywhere except in sort of a couple of jazz shops in London.
Who named it the Yardbirds?
Keith had the idea to call it the Yardbirds from a like On the Road Again type of book, I think. Probably that book itself, Jack Kerouac.
Right.
And the Yardbirds were the guys that used to bum lifts on steam trains and live in the rail yards.
Nomadic lifestyle, hobos, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Sort of romantic nomads.
Amazing.
But probably quite tough.
Right. Got to be very tough to have a lifestyle like that.
And quite funny for us because we were all young guys from suburbs of London.
Right, had no connection really.
Yes.
To who you guys were. But some of those bands that you were just naming, by the time that Five Live Yardbirds' first album was released, December 1964, original guitarist Top had been replaced by Eric Clapton. Can you share some first memories of meeting Clapton?
Well, yeah, Eric had been at the art school with Keith and Chris, so he had a reputation already, and he was a guy that sort of knew he had a reputation as soon as you met him. He sort of was a bit sort of, you know, I don't know what you call it really, but big-headed or whatever. So I didn't really like him very much. I thought, oh, this guy reckons himself, you know. But I got to like him eventually because he was quite a funny guy. We used to laugh and joke about a lot of stuff.
Interesting first memories. And yeah, he was a cat in demand, so I can imagine that some of those dudes must have come with a little bit of extra baggage as you're describing.
Well, yeah, that's right. But he was very, you know, give him his due, he was very dedicated. And he was completely dedicated to playing blues guitar. and he would be up in the morning practicing, and 8 o'clock in the morning or something, listening to all these blues records.
What an impact that record had. And I mean, the musical style was really significant. It introduced the long jams, the instrumental improvisation. Yeah. I mean, that really, when you think back to that year, this was really before the Grateful Dead had evolved into who they would become. And there you were improvising, jamming. And
we liked to do that. That was fun. That was sort of part of our, I don't know how that came about, but that was part of our thing. And Paul was very influenced by the Cyril Davis band because I think, he liked the bass player. And I think the bass player used to do those sort of double-up things. And Paul made that sort of double-up thing a part of our sort of sound. So we worked that out. We play a song and then do this big build-up. Became known as the Rave Up.
Ah, right.
And then go very quiet. It was all to get the crowd going and to get excitement going while we played.
Like building a climax is the Rave Up thing.
Yeah.
And utilizing these reworking American blues and R&B numbers, Smokestack Lightning, Good Morning Schoolgirl, I'm a Man, all of them which would be covered by other people later, and they'd try to do the same thing, but it's pretty amazing when you see the historic, you guys did it first. Yeah,
we were just trying to do, to make it our own, I guess. To play most of that stuff is 12-bar. Most of that blues stuff is a 12-bar format, and that's a little bit sort of conventional, bit predictable. It's going to go to the 4 and then the 5 and back to the 1. I mean, that's okay for some of it, but we just wanted to make it different.
What's an enduring memory of the time he was in the group a little less than 2 years, but a story that you recall from when Eric was in the band, maybe memories of recording For Your Love?
Yeah. I mean, he was very up and down. He was a very moody guy. He wanted to do his own thing. He could be quite difficult, but as I said, he was quite funny as well. And we used to do some funny shows. We played once at a gig in Wales, which was a really rough place. It's a sort of miners town.
Real blue collar.
We got in and we set up, and there was nobody there at all. When we started playing, and there was no one there. Then about 10:30, when the pub closed, all the people came in, and they were all men. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, they all started a big fight amongst themselves. And the promoter said to us, whatever you do, don't stop, just keep playing. So we were playing all this sort of Rave Up stuff, Too Much Monkey Business. And these guys were sort of beating the hell out of each other, and they were chasing each other out, behind us on the stage and all that. And there was all sort of blood coming out and everything. It's ghastly. And Eric played on and on. He was there, That was a funny night.
I can just picture it. You describe it well. That's a good story for radio, Jim, for sure.
Yeah. He was always very, he used to change his image all the time. He was a bit of a chameleon. Like he'd had long hair, and then all of a sudden he had this sort of American crew cut, and he'd turn up in all these Ivy League clothes and have like a trench coat. He used to wear a trench coat, and we were playing with the Beatles at Hammersmith Odeon at their Christmas show, and he was late one time. So we had to go on, because he wasn't there. We went on without him. And while we were playing, we saw him walk down the aisle carrying his guitar with his trench coat. We were playing.
And he came up and plugged in, or?
Well, I don't think so. No, he just walked down and walked into the dressing room. He was too late.
Wow, so you did a gig without Clapton because he just showed up late.
That's mad, isn't it?
That's no, those are great. Those are classic stories. And some of the description of him, when I think of changing his image, being a chameleon, in some ways, at least musically, that has been the side of Jeff Beck, too, who emerged as a recommendation of Jimmy Page, right, to replace him?
Yes, but he had complete spontaneous talent. He could just play anything, anytime. He seemed to be able to play this amazing stuff. Sometimes you could never understand it. because when we did Over, Under, Sideways, Down, we had this idea to do a sort of rockabilly. He said, I'll play the bass. I'll play rock. And he played this real sort of mean bass, rockabilly slap bass. I put the boogie, doom, 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 doom.
Right.
And I played the drums, and we put the track down. We layered it. And it sounded okay, but it was just a boogie. And so we thought, well, what about some sort of riff at the beginning? So then he made that riff up, at the beginning, and it sounded really weird. I mean, when you'd never heard it before, it was really strange. And I thought, how does this go with this song? That's really strange. It was right off the top of his head, but of course, the more and more you heard it, the more it sort of settled in.
Right. Yeah.
You accepted it.
Exactly, and it ended up fitting just right at the beginning of that. That's great. That's a fantastic little insight, actually. That's very cool.
It was like Slash's favorite riff, I think.
Slash, his favorite riff.
Slash, his favorite guitar riff.
Do you still remember when you guys filmed the segment for that movie Blow Up, where it actually has the Yardbirds playing Train Kept a Rollin', both Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page together?
Yes, that's funny. That was funny. That was it was in a film studio, a famous film studio, I think somewhere like Boreham Wood, which is in the north, just outside London. And what they'd done was they copied a club that we used to play in Windsor called the Ricky Tick. It was down by the river at Windsor. So they copied it perfectly. So you walked in the studio and you were basically in the club. And that little bit, that took about 5 days to do that
Wow.
little bit we did. And we all stayed in this hotel in London so we could leave like early altogether, like at 7 in the morning or something. So we could be on the set about 8. And so the thing would go all the way through for about 5 days. And he'd have the audience, Antonioni would have the audience all standing there like as if they were completely high, completely out their heads. And that would never happen. The people would all go mad when we played. They wouldn't just stand there like zombies.
Right. That's unbelievable. 5 days just to shoot that one scene.
I know. Actually, I'm doing an autobiography. All these things will be in that book.
When do you plan to have that out?
Probably next year, next spring.
Oh, that's a fantastic bunch of stories. Do you still remember Jimmy Page debuting his use of the bow on the guitar?
Well, I don't know if I can remember the exact night, but I remember him doing it, yeah.
Right, which was something that would grow to be a big part of the Zeppelin show, but he originated while playing with you.
He did. And I think he got it off the guy in the Creation, Eddie Phillips. I think Eddie did it first.
He also recording with John Paul Jones on bass when they did Happening 10 Years Time Ago, one of the few songs that featured both Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck on guitar, but also John Paul on bass. Do you have memories of that?
Yeah, that's correct. Jimmy had played with John Paul on sessions already.
Okay.
I don't know, whoever, Brenda Lee or PJ Proby, or probably lots of sessions, because they knew each other very well.
Sure.
They played very well together.
So they had already done a few gigs, but at least it was pre-Zeppelin.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they'd just done studio stuff.
You had become embraced by the counterculture scene in the United States and really started making a name for yourself on both sides of the Atlantic. One of the other strange sessions that I was reading about, and I don't know if you have any insight into it, but it appears Ha Ha Said the Clown had on organ Cheap Trick's Rick Nielsen playing with you guys, and Keith Relf being the only Yardbird, and then all session players backing him up.
Yeah, wasn't that weird?
How strange.
That's very strange, because that's the way Mickey wanted to do it. I don't think he ever quite got the group. He just saw a hit single and that was it, and then he just wanted to make the hit single as cheap as possible and as quick. He did most of them in a day, so he did a backing track in the morning, vocals in the afternoon, mixed it in the evening.
Unbelievable.
In a way, that's not the way we work.
Right.
And an arranger working for him. And this guy said, oh, I can never understand him doing it like this. You should all be playing on this. And in fact, I think we did a version of Sweet Josephine that was actually better than the session men. Good night, Sweet Josephine.
When you reflect on Keith Relf, in terms of like paying tribute or honoring him, what's a great story that embodies some of the spirit that he brought to the band?
I don't know if I can remember one particular story, but he was very eclectic in his taste. He loved jazz. He particularly liked the MJQ, Lionel Hampton and all those guys, and he loved jazz, and he was a great singer, and he always really went for it. He always went for really to try and get a great stage act, even though his voice wasn't very strong and he was struggling with his health all the time. He had sort of emphysema and asthma, and he had a lung removed at one time, so he was only working on one lung in the later days, playing harmonica with all that puff, So he was a real sort of trooper, I would say. But he was a great guy, and we used to spend lots of time together talking about the universe and the world and everything connected, all that stuff. We used to share a room most of the time and have our little recording set up, and we had a little record player and played the Mothers or Dave Brubeck or something or other, or Paul Butterfield. We used to like East West. That was sort of psychedelic. And
you guys would just share that in your room, listening to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's a great memory. That's a huge memory.
Yeah, we used to put all the candles on and light all those, those flickering, those Buddhist candles that flickered. Quite funny.
Wow. Well, now that's a wonderful way to remember him. It's a pretty spiritual way. That's kind of how I was thinking when I was watching The Edge inducting you guys into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and his children, his wife or something, that his relatives being there. It made me think of him and want to make sure we include him. In the same way, I think about Chris too. I feel like what's the thing that bonds you to him too?
Yes, yeah. Well, Keith's sons are really great guys. I work with Jason sometimes. He's a studio engineer. He doesn't work in the studio, but he teaches engineering in a school, in a college. And Danny, his brother, they're both great. They're sort of separate sides of Keith, really. Danny's the more of the spiritual one, and Jason's sort of the hands-on sound guy, So they're two sides of him, but they're both great guys.
What's an enduring memory of Chris too that you can pay tribute to him, and just what makes it maybe sad for you that you don't have him there by your side?
Well, Chris was always the one that sort of was always the steady one, and we were always sort of going mad and getting high or whatever, or doing mad things. But he was always steady, and I remember once we travelled on a Greyhound bus, and we were travelling like through the night, like doing a gig and then driving for about 8 hours or something, just in this bus. And we were all sort of really smelly and dirty. And Chris had this sort of Ivy League gear on, and he was as smart as anything. At the end of when we arrived, he was totally looked as if he'd just got up and just appeared from bed. He was really really clean and fresh.
He embodied a lot of that too, that stability.
Yeah, he was the steady one. He was always on time and always there, and always had his opinion. And whereas we were all up and down.
How about the character of the band today? How would you describe the latest group of cats that you've surrounded yourself with? Well,
there's a good chemistry. There's a good chemistry of people. They're all great guys working together, and Johnny is quite an extrovert. Mike Scavone's a really, really nice guy on the harmonica. John Iden, I've worked with him for a long time, so, he's pretty steady, and Kenny's more sort of up and down, but we all blend well together.
Going to be a very special show. I'm looking forward to you guys playing at the Blue Note in Waikiki for some shows. It'll be really nice to see you. It'll be a little sad that Chris isn't there, but
Yes.
I'm hoping I can come over and record a short thing, a follow-up with you, if that's okay.
Do. By all means.
I'd love to see you.
I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll enjoy the band.
I really am looking forward to seeing them, and it's just a real thrill to get to talk to you again. Jim McCarty, Yardbirds legendary drummer, original member. He's telling great stories. He's reflecting on all aspects of their career, and I hope you enjoyed talking today, Jim. It's a great thrill to get to talk to you again.
Yeah, I did, Dave. I did enjoy it. Thanks a lot.
I give you a big hug, Jim. Thank you so much for being so gracious.
Dave.
And I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you when you get to town. Be safe.
Yeah, we'll see you. Thanks.
Aloha.
Aloha. This is Jim McCarty of the Yardbirds, and you are tuned to All Things Considered with my friend Dave Lawrence. Don't forget to make a pledge to support this non-profit radio station. Here's some folks to tell you how, and thank you very much.